Okay, we've got the stock all set up. We've protected it. I use blue painter's tape. Doesn't leave any residue, though I will wipe it down with mineral spirits. Keeps the finish protected. Also have a pair of soft jaws that I use to make sure that we're all right. Actually just spaced it out so I could move the stock out, forcing me to move the mill cross slide in so that I'm over the base as solid as I can be. I've already done the side to side, which was in one of my other videos. So that's already been found center of the inlet. I know everything's true in this direction. I know everything's true this way. Of course, the concern being you want to make sure this slot is straight. You want to make sure it's vertical to the, to the inlet, because if it's not parallel to the inlet, if you go to try and put that receiver in, it's like this with the rear tang, but your rear tang slot's like this, it's not going to go. So keeping everything true, which it is. Now I need to find my back wall. Again, I'm using the edge finder. This little gives what you'd hear. You just offset a little bit. I'll start it up. Now as it runs, obviously it's a little bit eccentric. We're going to bring it in. Notice I've got it at 0, well, 5/10. So that's close enough. That's 5/10,000ths of an inch. So anyway, we're going to bring this in until it kicks off to one side. Zero the mill, or the DRO. Took it back out, bring it back into it again to double check. And, yep, well, I think I went a little bit too far. Let's try that again. Sometimes it's a matter of touch. You gotta sneak up on it. And it pops over. We'll just reset it at 0. Run it in. Bring this up so it's not touching, so it won't hit anything. Remember, this is 200,000ths wide, this tip. So the actual center, when I'm against the wall, it's 100,000ths away from the center to the edge. So I need to factor in that 100,000. So we're going to go 100,000 past. I'll go ahead and make this semi-centered here. You can see we're off and we're at the edge. See where we're 0 here. So we're right at the edge, but we want to go another 100,000ths. So we'll move her to the side till we get to 100. Once we're at 100, that means the center of the spindle is over that wall, and that's where I want to be. Again, so the information is repeatable and accurate. So now we're all zeroed out. So we're good to go. Now we're going to I'm going to put this down. And hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing. Remember, I am not a videographer. So, set that down. Bring this up a little bit so we're not going to interfere with anything. I'm going to rack this back. I'm going to rack it this way a little bit. I have to have clearance so I can change this out. This is a 1/2 inch collet, and get up underneath here, hook this, and now we'll take this out. And we'll put in the 9/16 end mill, straight end mill, high-speed steel uncoated. This happens to be a 4-flute. Again, doesn't make a heck of a lot of difference whether it's a 4-flute or a 2-flute. This happens to be what I have. So we'll stick that in there, tighten her up. As they say, guten tight. cap on the end mill, which tells me that I did do what I was supposed to do. Now, another step we've got to take is we've got to find, I usually base everything off the existing inlet rail, which is right here. And that's what the sidewall of your receiver sits against. This sidewall here drops down and sits against that rail, which is right here. So that's where I'll normally take all my dimensions off of. I already know from previous experience that the escutcheon for the kid rear Tang extends down about 75 thousandths past, past the wall, or the bottom of the receiver sidewall. So we'll bring this down. Make sure I'm not cutting anything with it. Let me give myself a little bit extra clearance here. Now this mill also has a Z-axis on it, which is right here. We'll take that down until it touches. We'll zero it. So that way I can track how deep I'm going. Okay? So, now that we've done that, it's time to start the milling process. A little bit cold, sorry. Anyway, we're going to take this over to 0 on the y-axis. Obviously, because we want to cut this in the center. It's basically what we did with the Tang, was mount it in the very center of the receiver, if you recall from my previous videos. Now I don't want to take too big a cut at one time, so what we'll do, I know that from the center, from the edge of the cutter, of the end mill to the center, is about 281.25. So we'll set this at 0, and we'll start out there. And basically from my cheat sheet, I know that what I'm going to do is I'm going to mill from 0 over to 0.484 for the centers of my milling with the end mill. I'm also going to go down the depth of the side rail plus 200, which is going to get me 125 below this, below the escutcheon. And it's going to give me plenty of bedding underneath here for what I need to do. So basically, on most 1022s, that nominal dimension is typically about 0.8 from the top of the side rail here down to the inlet here, or from here to here. It's typically about 800 thousandths, so I'm going to go down 1 inch. So what I'm going to do, I could either do that by setting the end mill on the top rail, or I can do it by setting here. I prefer to do it here and just go another 200 thousandths, because I know that that 200 thousandths is going to be correct. So we'll go ahead and get this milling started. Turn this on. Run her up to about 1300. Not critical. And I'm going to run this down about to where this reads plus 200. And you notice everything's at 0 on the DRO. So we'll run her down. Keep going. We haven't even reached the rail for the inlet yet. That will be at 0. So now we're about even with that that rail. Okay? So we'll come back and we'll run this down the rest of the way down to about 0.2. It's not critical, but we certainly want to be right around 0.2. Okay, I'm going to go in another 100. Which is basically 2.5 turns on the handle. You run her down again. Same distance. And get down to 0.2 plus 0.2. There's 1, 2. We'll run her in another 2.5 turns. 1, 2.5. Takes us to 422.5, and we're looking for 484. So, we'll run it down again. Now this will leave some high areas between the cuts. I'll show you how we clear those out once we get to that point. Get this all the way down. There's 1 and 2. One more time. We're going to take it all the way to 484 this time. If it goes a little bit over, it's not a big deal. 484 just needs me a little room. Okay, so we'll take this one down. To about 0.2. Now I'll stop here in a second and I'm going to lock it. I'm going to run it down the rest of the way this way. Close enough. So just a clearance for. Then I'm going to take my speed, my power feed. I'm going to feed this out. And what it's going to do as it comes out, it's going to cut those sides. It's going to clear them up. You can hear it. You can hear it as it hits those sides, that side a little bit. And we're going to bring her all the way out. And bingo. Stop it. And we'll bring it up. So, blow that out. As you can see, now we have our rear tang cut in the slot. By using very sharp tooling, we don't end up with any chipping out here, and if we do, it's very minimal. But more times than not, I don't see anything. And we got sidewalls that are really good. So that tang now will fit in there just perfect. So now what I want to do is I want to take this out. Unfortunately, I have to rack it back and forth to do that because it's the height of it. Put it away. I'm going to grab the key seat cutter, mount it. Funny looking little thing, isn't it? This is usually used for cutting woodruff keyways and slots. It works great for this. Pop that back on. I'm going to try and do this. Well, I won't be able to do it without holding the camera, or you won't be able to see anything. So we'll take this back over to 0. Okay, we're going to back this out. I know that's 3/4, so I got to be at least, I can come out here 375 and I'll be just fine. Now what I need to do with this one is take, I'm not exactly sure how to set this camera up, so I'm not looking for professional quality, but I'd like y'all to be able to see what we're doing. I want to bring this down. To the side rail again. And zero out my vertical axis, or my Z DRO, because I really don't need to go below that. I've got plenty of material that's going to be around the escutcheon to hold it, so we'll be in good shape here. I'm just worried about now making some clearance for DevCon around the Tang. So I know that's 0. That's where I'm going to start my cut. So we'll rack this back over to 0. I'm not going to cut as fast as I did. I don't know exactly what the surface speed's supposed to be on this, so I kind of drop it down to where I feel comfortable. It's right around 1,000 or so. Seems to work just fine. And we'll start running her in. This is at 0, so I know I'm pretty even with that top rail. I'll run it in until I touch, listen for it. A little bit farther than I thought. And you'll hear it. Could be any time. Usually around 250 or so. And you hear it touching. So I'll take the power feed and I'll start feeding it in. I don't feed it in real fast because obviously we don't want to cause any damage. Hopefully you can see this. See if I can get the light up here a little bit farther. You can see it cutting a slot down in there. And we'll do that a number of times. Now I'm going to run this in until I'm at about 475 up here. So what that does, it gives me plenty of undercut, but it also keeps the stem from hitting the sidewall. 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. So we're going to be just short with the stem. Okay, and then we'll run her back out by hand. Also know that my cutter is about 1 inch wide, so we're going to come up 100 thousandths. Oop. Wrong wheel. Good thing it didn't matter. Okay, we'll come up 100 thousandths. So back this up till we're at about a minus 100. Run her into some touches, which is going to be around 250. Yep. We'll run her again. And you can see it down there cutting that slot. Does a pretty decent job, it really does, and it works very well. Again, we'll run this over to 484. You see how we're getting closer and closer with the stem of the shank. So 475, 40, 50, 60, 70. 471 would be fine too, but we'll go to 475 for y'all. And then we'll back her out. Past the 250, bring her up another 100. Bring her back in. Now obviously you don't want to slam it in there. It's touching. Go again. See how we're getting a much bigger slot. I am actually 300 thousandths above the bottom rail, so I'm 225 thousandths above